Well, hello, Romanisti and fans of Italian football. I'm Wayne Gerard. We are going to be previewing Roma versus Lecce, taking a look at Jose Mourinho's pre-press conference comments, as well as what is Roma doing in the standings, what is actually going on with this injury crisis. Are they ever going to have a starting lineup? Let's get into it very quickly. By the way, today I ran into an old friend, Matt Santangelo, who many of you know if you follow Football Italia, or he even does Serie A fantasy with me. And he's coincidentally, we grew up in the same towns. It was good running into him. My high school, where I used to coach, they were in a state sectional final, and very bad luck for them. I really feel for my boys today, but you know, sometimes you need those losses in life to make you that much better and to teach you how to win. And I wonder if that's the same type of approach that Roma can use right now, because in the past 11 years, they haven't had so few points in the Serie A season, which of course is concerning. And will Roma look at those lessons in the past and how they approach a match like Lecce, one where they're supposed to take all 3 points, one where there are no excuses, no alibis. Mourinho cannot go and say, I didn't have the players, I didn't have this, I didn't have that. Whatever. It really doesn't matter when you come up. You're going to have 61,000 fans there at the Stadio Olimpico. This is going to be a big match for a lot of purposes, reasons aside from just the opponent. And what I mean is, as we take a look at the standings right here, Lazio lost. Not sure if you saw that goal from Ferguson for Bologna, and Thiago Motta's side, the manager who many of the pundits and the news thinks Thiago Motta will be taking over after Mourinho, he's got his side into sixth. And in fact, they're in great form, 18 points there. Atalanta lose against Inter Milan, and Napoli they came away with a win against Salernitana in the derby of Campania. And Milan right now are playing Udinese. Juventus are making the most of not having European football, and Inter, who I think are one, like I've said this, one of the best sides in Europe right now. I think they're going to go on and win this Scudetto, and I would be happy for them, man. You know what? They're a good team. They've got a good fan base. They're strong, and I don't hate. I don't have any type of resentment towards that. They played a good game with Roma last weekend, and what can you do when we look down into ninth place here and we find Roma with that loss, of course, as the most recent result? And there was no European midweek match, so that is the last game that Roma didn't indeed play, and 14 points out of 10 matches. So just over, what is that, 1.2 average points per game? And it's just simply not good enough. We see Fiorentina there as well. Roma gets the opportunity to jump up to seventh place, tied with Fiorentina. I'm also curious to see, look at this top four. You've got the last year's champions in fourth spot. Milan, are they going to let off the gas? I don't know. They have a lot of depth. They talk about this defender crisis, yet they still have guys on the bench who can do a job. Juventus, I don't think they're going to cool off. They barely play. They're always healthy. They're always fit. And Inter's going to win the league. So is that fourth spot really up for contention? I'm not so sure. I think fifth is. Sixth, yeah. Fiorentina and Lazio are going to battle for that. But you know what? That backstretch is going to make all the difference. So many times we talk about how the season's going to end up. What are the standings going to look like? But in those last 8 games are so important, because that's when the marathon element really kicks in, and who's left in Europe and what players are still fit and able to go and approach the match. And even today, we're going to look at this starting lineup right here. This is from Sports Mole. The one from Gazzetta dello Sport has not come out yet, but it looks like Patricio Mancini Llorente indica Chris Smalling still out, man. It's getting frustrating at this point, because Roma's doctors said he should be good, yet he's still saying that there's pain. On the right, Christensen, I don't agree with this one. I think it's going to be Karsdorp. Bove Cristante in midfield, because Paredes is out due to suspension, with Aouar being the more attacking midfielder of the three. Zalewski out left in place for Spinazzola, who's on the sidelines, with Dybala and Lukaku up top. Not so sure Dybala is going to start. He is back. Yes, he's able to play, but for a full 90 minutes, getting the start, I'm not so sure. I think we can even see El Shaarawy into that role. I also just want to add that this Lecce side is no slouch. Roberto D'Aversa has them playing some good, decent football. Strefetz is one of my favorite players in the league, not just because he's short and he's a playmaker, but also he's a really good player. Roberto Piccoli, he scored last week, just a few days ago, actually. That was in the Coppa Italia, but they were knocked out. Actually, they were up 2-0, I think. Or no, Parma scored in like at the death, like 2 goals, which isn't a good look. Shows a little bit of a weak mentality there for the Serie A team, to go out against the Serie B leaders. It's not such a good look. And you could see the last match that was 4-2 on the right-hand side. And the one before that was also a loss against Torino. And then it was a draw, another loss. That's their last 5. Not great. But then we look over at Roma's last 5, and it's decent. Got the loss against Inter, but before that, Slavia Praga 2-0, 1-0 against Monza, 4-1 over Cagliari, and then the big win over Servette, the Swiss team. Head-to-head, Roma's gotten the best out of the last 5. Most recently, that was February 11th. That was a 2-1. Then we've got October 9th, also 2-1, a 3-1 in the Coppa Italia, January. That's over a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, and then a 4-0. So still waiting on their formations, saying nothing's in yet, but I think it's going to be relative to the one that was on Sportsmole. It seems right. I think Aouar needs to get the start. I want to see him and Dybala play together and see how the two of them really start to mesh, play off of one another, combine 1-2s, start to create. That's been Roma's big problem, especially against Inter, as they were playing so far back, but there was no hook. There was no person to segue the team from the midfield to the attack. It was just long ball, isolate Lukaku, and that's not really a practical strategy. I don't fault Mourinho for his strategy against Inter. I think it was actually the right one. I just don't think that the players offered enough, to be honest with you. Speaking of Jose, who will be back on the bench after his suspension, he speaks to the press this morning. His first question is, what are the conditions of Dybala and Renato? He says they're not in optimal conditions, but according to the doctors and trainers, no risk, good to go. This is what we need to hear also for the players who have the right confidence to be on the pitch. They're in the team tomorrow and they can give us a hand. Everyone else who is out will stay out. Then he's asked, what are the pitfalls in tomorrow's match? By pitfalls, what they really mean is like, where can Roma get stopped? Where can they have some obstacles? And he says, Lecce is a good team, counterattacking team, very strong at that. They have very fast players on the wings, both on the right and left, being Strefezza. They have solutions to change during the match, and they do so often. They have a good coach who knows also how to organize the team from the point of view of construction and organizing them. They're having an excellent Serie A. They lost only one match due to exaggerated numbers against Napoli. Then the rest achieved results or fought until the end. Then next question, what is Roma missing to be able to play in the big matches? Roma historically have a terrible record under Mourinho with playing the big teams. How much distance is there with the great teams in this championship? He says, I don't want to enter into criticism. I don't want to criticize or into the planning of the future by saying what is missing and what's not. We were missing 5 starters. If they were missing, Inter would have had 5 more to play. The same would be true for Milan, Juventus, Atalanta, or Fiorentina. When are we missing when we don't have 5 other starters? Do you agree with that one? That Fiorentina and Atalanta could also slot in 5 starters. I don't, not with that. Milan, yes. Juventus, probably not either. I think Juventus' bench is not too far from Roma's player for player overall, the roster. But Milan, sure. I do agree that it's too much to overcome. Those absences, those key players, Smalling, Dybala, I don't even can't count Renato anymore. But just those 2 alone are it's deadly. There's no answer yet. I think it should be Aouar. I think he could be that guy who gets more forward, but yet to be seen. Should we resign ourselves to the fact that 5 starters like Smalling, Spinazzola, Sanchez, and Dybala will never be able to be there except for short periods? He said the answer is also in your question. A bit mysterious here. An injured player is one thing. Someone with a medical history is another. An injured person does not have a medical history, but like all athletes, they had an injury at some point. Players who have a medical history are those cyclically have physical problems that recur year after year. They are different things. If the injuries are non-contact, like Dybala's last year with Palomino, there are injuries that a coaching staff feels needs to do something more of in terms of prevention and to speed up recovery. When there is a clinical history, it is difficult. Gareth Bale, he gives the example, was in the best club in the world for years, and his medical history did not allow him to be super at top, but he was only so in certain moments. When his medical history didn't allow him to be available, there were others to play and keep the level high. Roma have several players with a clinical history. I'll tell you the truth. I'm happy to have them at certain times. When they don't fit, they don't fit. There is a difficult clinical history to combat. Do you think Dybala would be here without his medical history? I know Smalling better than all of you. I had him in Manchester, and I'm happy when he is available. End quote. Before I ask you to subscribe and like this video, if you're new here, whatever, I know those of you who've been with me from the start, you always help support. I want to ask you something. Is it better to have a lower quality team, but one that is fit more often than not, rather than a team with stars who can play bit roles 50%, 65, 70% of games, but are not always there? So it's a quantity versus quality. I want you to think about that question. Let me know what you think of that in the comments. I'm always thinking of this. Should Roma rely on guys like Dybala? Should they be the cornerstone of the team? Dybala is the least of Roma's problems, but I look at other players that at this point in time have been renewed or are on big contracts. Is it worth keeping a team that can only play at a starting 11 50% of the time? Does that help them build chemistry? Is that a secret for success that I don't know about? I think that's something that we have to think of as fans and people who want to see this team do good. I lean towards, I would honestly take players like Strefezza, like Baldanzi, who of course has a market now, but youth team members, if it meant that they could stay fit rather than overcompensating or going above Roma's means. I think of this, as a technical director, and I really have to consider what it means to be there more often than not, even when the skill does not match. I'm going to leave you at that. Guys, we'll talk right after Roma versus Lecce. Hopefully that is a win for the Giallorossi. Hopefully they move into 7th and start making some ground and making up for lost time. We'll talk then, guys. Ciao, ciao.